Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 29th and tonight's movie is Heretic. This is yet another movie from 2024, though it is the last one of the month. This was a movie that was personally recommended by someone I know. It actually replaced one of the movies on the original list. It's about these two Mormon missionaries who visit this man's house doing what missionaries do, and he invites them in, and this turns into some sort of theological saw trap where he tests their faith or something. The crazy man is played by Hugh Grant, who spent most of his career as a rom-com heartthrob, but apparently as of late has become a character actor. That almost seems to be a pattern, you do your grind in your early career and then you get to play the really fun roles later on. Anyway, out of all the movies I've seen, this, on its surface reminds me the most of The Vigil, this sort of overtly religious horror movie, though this one doesn't seem to have any sort of supernatural element from what I can tell. The directors are Scott Beck and Brian Woods, and when I looked them up, I was actually really excited because they were the ones who directed Haunt, which is one of the better slasher movies I've ever seen. So I'm a little bit more hopeful that this is going to turn out good. But I guess the only way to know for sure is to watch it. I'll be right back. This movie actually is a lot like Haunt. It starts out feeling very average, and then it gradually keeps getting better, and by the very end, it's absolutely spectacular. I haven't seen Haunt in a while, but I feel like this movie had higher highs and lower lows, but overall it averaged out to about the same quality, and I'm gonna give it the same rating, 9 out of 10. I don't believe I've ever actually seen a Hugh Grant movie before this. But I know the jokes. He's apparently known for being British and stuttering and just being so charmingly befuddled. And I will admit, even in this movie, there is a charm to him. The way he acts is very much in line with what I was expecting. But the thing is, he never turns that off. I was waiting for a point where he quote-unquote gets serious, but that doesn't happen, which is a little weird. Hugh Grant did do great in this movie, but in my opinion, much more impressive were the performances of the two leads. You got two Mormon missionaries, Sophie Thatcher as Sister Barnes and Chloe East as Sister Paxton. I don't think at any point in this movie you ever hear their first names. Hugh Grant was kind of on one mode the entire movie. There is a lot of range in these roles, and they both nailed it. Sister Paxton is cute as a button. She's bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, very eager, and Sister Barnes is a lot more quiet and self-assured. She's a little older, and she's the one who kind of takes charge when things get ugly. I was curious about what the movie's themes were from a religious standpoint because it was a choice to make them Mormons specifically, and I've heard a lot of things about Mormons in both directions. Ultimately, the movie seems to be kind of neutral in the way it frames religion. It seems a lot more interested in analyzing humans and what they do. So this movie has a lot going for it, but there are a couple problems. I'd say the biggest is the fact that the movie feels slow, especially towards the beginning. When they get to the house, it feels like it's one scene that takes about an hour. It's not that it was boring, it does ramp up the tension gradually, but after a while it was just wow, we're still here. But the pace does improve a lot in the second half of the movie. One of the things that really impressed me about Haunt was it's sort of hero's journey of the main character, and there is something very similar to that in Heretic. I'm not going to go into detail about that now because that would require going into spoilers, and I would recommend you check out this movie yourself. Let me end this part of the review by summing it up this way. Heretic is like if you combined The Vigil with Barbarian. And if that sounds like it would interest you, check it out. Alright, now I want to go into some spoilers. One of the first moments where it becomes clear that something is, actually wrong, this guy isn't just wasting their time, he is straight up to something, involves the lie that he says about his wife in the kitchen making a pie. And they can smell the pie cooking, but eventually he leaves the room, and Barnes notices a candle on the table, and she turns it around and sees that it's a scented candle meant to smell like blueberry pie. According to this movie, it's apparently a rule with female missionaries that they're not going to enter a man's house unless his wife is also there, or at least another woman living in the house is also there. I guess that's a safety thing. So the fact that he would go to such lengths to lie about that is a very bad sign. And then they see that the front door is locked and there is no cell phone signal, and they know they're in trouble. They go to the back of the house, and Hugh Grant's character, Mr. Reed, gives them this like long pre-prepared presentation about how all religions are just different variations of the same lie. And then he presents them a choice between two doors, one that he labels belief and the other disbelief. And he gives them the choice about which way they want to leave the house in. And during this part of the movie, Paxton seems to be more on the mindset of just agree with him, say what he wants to hear, don't try to fight it, while as Barnes is a lot more combative and like argues with him. And naturally, Mr. Reed seems more than happy to argue with her about this, because if there is one thing that the internet has taught me about atheists, is that they love debate. Barnes decides that they are going to go through the belief door, and just to prove my earlier point, they first knock on his door about 6 minutes into the movie, and they don't go through the belief door until 56 minutes into the movie. So that means everything I've described so far, which isn't a lot, was 50 minutes. It turns out it didn't even matter which door they went through, they both led to the same basement. Anyway, the same sort of dynamic continues where it's mostly Barnes, like, combating against him, not physically, but, like, mentally. And then we get to a major turning point in the movie where Mr. Reed slashes the throat of Sister Barnes and she dies. And the rest of the movie is Sister Paxton, who up until that point had been kind of frazzled and not really knowing what to do, has to actually step up. And it's not like there's a moment where it's like a switch is flipped and suddenly she's a lot more confident. She starts out like kind of slow and unsure of herself, but as the third act continues, she sort of builds up steam. There was a really good callback moment. When they were in the study, Barnes picked up a letter opener that was like just laying there and gave it to Paxton, saying that he's watching her too closely, but Paxton can stab her when she gives the signal and they come up with the code word. Earlier in that day, someone pantsed her, making a joke about magic underwear. I have heard about, like, secret underwear from Mormons. I don't really know what that's about. But anyway, Barnes gives the cue, but before she could even get it out, that's when Mr. Reed slashes her in the neck with a box cutter. And at almost the end of the movie, where it feels like all hope is lost and Paxton has just been playing into his hands the entire time, in his gloating, he says magic underwear, and that's when she stabs him with the letter opener right in the jugular. There's a nice moment following that where, after he returns the favor by stabbing her in the stomach, he asks her to pray for them, I guess thinking that she won't do it, but she does, and she says, people don't really pray because they think it's going to do something. They pray because it's nice to think about other people. And then we get a moment that struck me as a little too convenient. Mr. Reed is about to finish her off and like stab her when out of nowhere he gets blasted in the side of the head with like this wooden board that had nails sticking out of it. They tried to do an escape with climbing and that fell down. Barnes sort of like rested it somewhere in the room and I kind of forgot about it. Turns out it was Barn who was doing that thing that characters do in movies where you think they're dead, but then they revive just to do that one last push and then immediately die. And Paxton, still with a giant wound in her abdomen, does manage to leave the house. And there was a moment early on in the movie where she talked about after she dies, she wants to be reincarnated as a butterfly, and she would land on people's hands just to let them know that she was her. And when she leaves, she sees a butterfly land on her hand, but then there's like a cut and it's gone, so I guess she imagined it. I'm not really sure what they were trying to go for there. It's almost like they thought that ending would be too cheesy, so they kind of bailed on it. And then the movie's over. And I don't really understand the timeline of this movie. When they first get to the house, it's like evening, but by the time they're done, which even in movie time couldn't have been more than like 3 or 4 hours, it's like morning. I think that the best part about Heretic was sort of seeing Paxton's journey. She started out being a lot more passive and frazzled and really unsure about what to do at the beginning of the conflict, but by the end of it, she has a lot more confidence. Just like Haunt, one of the better qualities of this movie is its attention to detail. The horror and the execution of the story is not restrained, but it is precise, if that makes sense. Like, little things do matter. Overall, I would absolutely recommend Heretic, and I am very interested to see what Scott Beck and Brian Woods make in the future. Alright, thank you for listening. I'll see you tomorrow.